Call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Chairman Brunsworth.
I'll do Councilmember Amparano,
Here.
Councilmember Burnsworth,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dale,
Here.
Mayor Eugenio,
Here.
and Councilmember Tucker is absent for the record.
Councilwoman Burdenworth, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
Mr. Morita, any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no adjustments to the agenda, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any public appearances for matters appearing on the agenda? Not seeing any, who do I ask? Oh,
There were no public appearances received prior to tonight's meeting, nor anyone joining virtually who wishes to comment, Madam Mayor.
okay, thank you. All right, that moves us to B1, discussion action, Imperial Irrigation District redistricting drafts. So this is a review of IID redistricting, that's a hard word to say, drafts, and consider one of the three potential actions, support one of the three drafts, or propose a different plan or take no action. All right, I'll open the discussion. Questions, comments?
Is there anybody, well, sorry, you asked for comments? Is that what it was, Mayor?
Well,
I can basically state what's in your agenda report.
okay.
This is a special meeting called by the mayor to address the proposed redistricting. The district is planning to have the first of what I understand will be two public hearings. The first one is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. As I understand it, they plan no action at tomorrow's meeting, but they anticipate a second public hearing, at which time they would again receive public input and potentially take action on a redistricting. So if what you have as part of your packet are what I understand are the three drafts of maps that have been prepared by a consultant, which, as a footnote, I understand same consultant also assisted Imperial County in its redistricting efforts. So as is indicated in your staff report, the draft A contemplates removing some unincorporated area in the vicinity of Ironwood Acre Estates and Wildflower in between Laboucherie and Austin and north to Ayton, would remove those areas from District 5 and move them into District 1, I believe. The second map, and I apologize, I tried to get a map that has roads on it and couldn't find that. So what you have is in your staff report is what you have, but it's kind of hard to pick out exactly what's going on. The second draft would remove, would keep the Ironwood as part of District 5 and remove the Wildflower. The third draft would essentially keep those two areas in District 5 and remove smaller areas from Calexico and the Hopeville districts to make up that population. As you probably know, the whole idea of redistricting is something that's required by law every 10 years to coincide with the census. So we had a recent census, and so now comes time for the realignment to try to keep the districts equal in population. As you know, Imperial is one of the faster growing areas in the state, and so in order to keep the districts equal population-wise, that's why you see what you see in the first two draft maps. One concept that was discussed in the, at least when the county held its public hearings, I attended the one that was held here in your chambers, and there was reference to something called the community of interest. And the idea of a community of interest is if you have one, then the better approach would be to maintain that area intact as opposed to dividing it. I see an argument, for example, with respect to Ironwood. It's unincorporated area, and those folks receive some city services, and I imagine a good many of them maintain their pipe accounts with IID for irrigation purposes. But some of those folks get city water, some get city sewer. So you can argue various community of interest. Of course, if you say, well, community of interest is someone who gets power from IID, well, that's the whole county.
Everybody.
Right? And so, but at least with respect to Ironwood, they have a community of interest in that, unlike their neighbors to the east, they get canal water for irrigation purposes. And with respect to the Wildflower, obviously that area is served school-wise by Wagner, and so they would have that in common with their neighbors to the north. So that's something to take into account. Obviously, final call on this lies with the board of the irrigation district, and so the question is, do you want to weigh in some way with respect to the communities of interest potentially?
Yes, for my comment, it would be that I would rather keep Imperial altogether. That would be my thing. Yes, Ironwood does receive services from us, which I guess would have really no impact on the irrigation district, but I just think keeping Imperial together to me would be the best bet. So I think I would propose to go with draft C for what is presented to us.
If it
I would make a motion.
Now, just one other thing. I'm not aware of what public input the district has already received in this matter, and as I sit here now, my understanding is there's going to be further public input tomorrow at 4, and at a future meeting, I think the deadline is like December the 9th, and so sometime between now and December the 9th, the district will be basically closing public input and making a decision. I guess one option for you would be to wait and see if there is other public input that you might find to be relevant.
So how much does our decision weigh on this entire process?
Well, I would say there's zero legal impact. Legally, the district isn't required to take into account what we say or our opinions in the matter. So, I mean, there are all kinds of ways to look at this. For example, if indeed the area of Wildflower were to be put in a different district, you might say, whoa, well, City of Imperial, now if it's all intact, we have one representative. If you put Wildflower in a different district,
Two.
potentially we have potentially a second voice on the board. Now, are those the kinds of things that we want to weigh those? To me, I guess from where I sit, I want to kind of stay away from the political aspects of all of this and who lives in what district and who may do this or that or the other thing. But obviously there are many things to take into account.
But I think for simplicities, it's easier to deal with one representative than to deal with two. Because if we deal with two on the same issue, that third person's talked to somebody else, and now we have Brown Act issues. So, I mean, I'm looking at it like that, but if our decision as a council weighs zero on this entire process, I understand that Mayor Eugenio asked for the special meeting, but why have a meeting if our say-so really doesn't matter?
I say it doesn't matter from a legal standpoint.
Correct.
I think you are often asked to weigh in on matters where the final decisions rest with other bodies, and those other bodies are interested in what we have to say.
Okay.
Now, it's a different question to say, well, can we legally stop something or do something, or do we have a vote? And
That's
so
the
when I
difference.
said zero, that's what I was referring to.
Okay.
I didn't mean to suggest that what you say doesn't matter at all
No worries.
under any circumstance. So from that standpoint, I would say that the district, there's a reason you have public hearings. It's because you want to receive input, and so you're in that sense like any other citizen with a voice.
I
So
think,
would we be sending a letter as a council, or would we just be submitting like essentially like a public comment?
I would recommend that, depending on the position that the council took action on this evening, we would submit a formal letter of comment. I would also recommend that a representative, whether it be the mayor or, several members, attend the public hearing to deliver those comments, but to have it in both writing and in person would be the most impactful.
Robert, as Mr. Morita said, legally, we don't have decision-making part of the process, but as this is the city that we're on the city council of, I think our opinion definitely is taken into consideration and weighs in as they're trying to figure out which map that they'll go with. Because Imperial is a community of interest, I also believe that it should stay intact. Of these three choices, I think C is the best choice. Imperial will continue to grow over the next decade and should remain one division rather than splintered into several. And it's my understanding also that there may be more maps, other variations that may keep Imperial intact. So I think for me, I would go with any variation that keeps it intact. If there's a better version of C, but basically anything that keeps us whole is my suggestion.
Did we weigh in on when the county did the redistricting?
No.
We did not.
Not formally.
I mean,
I agree with
we
Mary.
did attend the public hearings that the county had all over the county. The one that was held here, we attended. The issue of our growth did come up, and what was made very clear in that context was that what the redistricting involved does not take into account projections about growth. The measure is the census, and so the fact that, and I would say that the growth that we expect to continue would weigh against keeping us intact. It would say, well, gee, over the next 10 years, if you're going to be the fastest growing city around, then we should shrink it more because your population is needed to balance out other places. So it's the current census.
But the county did keep Imperial intact, so it'd be nice if IID did the same. Anyone else?
no, I just think stand with draft plan C or any variation that keeps the city of Imperial intact.
Gather that would include contiguous unincorporated area,
Correct.
the contiguous unincorporated.
And continue red areas within the city of Imperial.
So for supporting one of the three drafts, if there's a variation that's better than C but keeps it intact, then how would we make that motion tonight? Okay. Then can I get a motion to support C or any variation, or a better, if there's a better variation that would keep Imperial intact, either one of those, C or a D if there is a possible one.
So move.
I have a motion by Amparano,
Second.
and I have a second by Jeff Dale. Please vote.
Councilmember Alvarado, it didn't record your vote. If you could state it for the record, it's okay. I watched it. Could you state your vote?
A vote would be yes.
Okay. Motion carries 4-0.
That is it?
There we go.
All right, as there is nothing else on the agenda for this evening, I adjourn this meeting at 6:16 PM. Thank you for everyone for coming this evening.